Welcome back, everybody, to His Heartbeat. We have another exciting episode this week and a different episode, one that's close to my heart as I have a film script writer son, but this is not my son, but welcome, Craig Dehut. Dehut. It's great to have you here to talk to us today about film and kids and the Christian audience, etc.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this is great and kind of a different topic for us, but we really try to holistically hit all areas that impact our lives. So to start out, we'd love to just hear a little bit about you and also how you got into film,
Sure.
filmmaking.
Sure. So my wife and I, Karen, we live here in the Midwest. We've got three kiddos and homeschool those kiddos. I've been interested in film and video since I was probably a teenager. I am old enough to say that the first video camera that we got was tape, like 8 millimeter tape camera.
Okay.
And we'd go out in the backyard and just do silly, ridiculous things, Robin Hood and superheroes. And for many years, it was just something fun that we did with our friends. But in high school, I really started to kind of think, video and film actually combines a lot of the things that I'm very much interested in, storytelling and technology and art, and decided to pursue a career in that, and went to film school in Atlanta, Georgia. Graduated from there in 2007. And since that time, as I'm sure any creative could tell you, my career path has kind of done this, a little bit here and a little bit there. And, I focused primarily in film school on writing and directing feature films, um, but with a moral base, with a Christian worldview. And that was very contrary to what I was actually being taught there at school, but it was something
Mm.
that I really wanted to use my talents for. And over the years, I've been blessed to work in television news and animation and video game mobile design, illustration, and over the last 10 years especially, have really kind of settled in documentary filmmaking and especially
Okay.
traveling overseas and doing what we now do with our non-for-profit Appian Media.
Okay, so what led you to that, to looking overseas and filming overseas?
It's always interesting to think about what God teaches you over a period of time, and then some pieces just kind of come together. And so that was not something I, was pursuing. I had never traveled overseas. The farthest out of our country I had ever been was Montreal, and I was there for 2 days. Um, but a colleague of mine, Stuart Peck, he and I were, both working in the industry here in Indianapolis and sitting down talking about coffee and talking about our industry. And Stuart was teaching a high school Bible class at the time and was making comments like he was struggling to get these kids engaged. You're opening the book, you're trying to get them to realize how meaningful and powerful that message is, but they're used to learning with visuals.
Mm.
And he and I are used to producing visuals. And he was struggling finding high quality, biblically accurate, and free videos that he could show these kids in class. And so it was actually Stewart who kind of threw the idea out, maybe half joking, maybe not, but said, what would it take for us to do something like that? How hard could it possibly be to travel over to Israel and make some videos so that we could have this resource that we just can't seem to find?
It
We
sounds
are
hard to
certainly
me.
well,
You say it
I'm
sounds complicated. I go
it
overseas a
is. How
lot, but
hard could it
carrying
possibly be?
equipment and all that,
Yes.
getting
I
permissions.
I know we didn't at the time realize how hard.
Mm,
And I'm glad we didn't know how hard because we probably would have talked ourselves out of it.
right.
But we did. We pursued that, and that was in 2015 when the idea was born. We ended up running a Kickstarter campaign the following spring that helped to finance our very first trip to Israel. And we raised the money to take a very small team over to Israel and start a series that we call Following the Messiah, where we travel to the places that Jesus lived and taught and died, and then cut it together over the next 8 to 10 months, and it's now available for free online. And that started us on a path. Numerous trips to Israel and Turkey and Egypt and Jordan, and we've been able to produce now, six, seven, eight, depending on how you count them, eight different series, well over 20 hours worth of content where people can see the lands of the Bible and help visualize the things that they're studying in God's Word.
So how do you fund something? I mean, you guys need to live. You can get a paycheck unless
Right.
you're delivering pizza on the side, like my son's had to do a lot.
Yep, as most creatives do, right? I
Yeah,
schlepped
yeah.
coffee for 6.5 years. It's part of the nature of the business. It is an interesting business model, isn't it? We make videos and then we give them away. And I know when we explain that to our colleagues, they go, something's missing here.
Yeah.
How do you do that?" As a non-for-profit, individuals donate to us, tax-exempt donations, and we've been blessed over the years to raise the necessary funds, and it's a lot. International documentary
Hmm.
production is not a cheap endeavor, um, but we typically will raise the funds that we need not only for production to pay the team that's coming with us, and the 8 to 10 to 12 months of post-production and writing on the other half of it, so that when the content is finished, we can then give it away. We're not trying to recoup that cost, and people have really got on board with that. That they see the value in the resource that's being provided, and they want more people to have access to it. So they'll donate so that general audiences don't have to pay for it. And we've been blessed, over the last 8, 9, 10. We're getting close to 10 years now, where um, we know how to stretch a dollar. We come from families that know how to be frugal. We are not spending the kind of money that Hollywood would spend on something like this, but we're doing our best to produce a quality product and to make it something that people can use. So.
So are your buyers often or primarily homeschoolers, or are you having Christian schools purchase this, or just individuals?
Yeah, it's so interesting. We originally set out, as I mentioned, with Bible classes in mind. So, Sunday school and
Mm.
families that wanted to use that in their home Bible studies. But you better believe that the homeschool community very quickly kind of went, "Hey, we like that. Free videos, yes."
Mm.
And so, yes, we have very much been welcomed into the homeschool community. I grew up homeschooled. My wife did not. She actually has an education as a teacher, but we are choosing to homeschool our kids and see the value in it. And so we typically, in fact, we're doing at least two of them this year. We'll go to homeschool conventions with the resources that we
Good
have.
idea. Yeah.
The videos themselves are free. You can go online and watch everything that we make. We do also produce written study guides. So these are videos or these are books that have the videos baked into the pages with QR codes. You can link
Mm.
and watch a video and go through the lesson and read the text. And we do sell those. It's a fundraising mechanism for us. And the homeschool community and church communities, Christian schools eat that up, and we're really happy to provide that.
That's really cool. So, what do you think is the way that we can help draw the younger generation
Mm,
into appreciating the Bible? You know, they're told that it's useless and old-fashioned and whatever,
right.
countercultural, blah 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 blah.
It's true. And it really does stem from what started this was we had high schoolers in mind at the beginning.
Mm.
We very quickly realized that everyone is a visual learner to some degree. It's important to read the text. That's how God chose to preserve his word over millennia, and it works out just fine. And yet, our brains engage the imagination when we read the text. We create visuals,
Right.
and so we believe it's important for everyone, but especially for young people, to make sure their minds are being filled with the right kinds of visuals. So we want to show you what Jerusalem looked like. We want to show you taking a boat ride out on the Sea of Galilee. We want to show you the cave most likely that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. It wasn't a red barn, like we would think of, born in a stable. It was most likely a small cave there in Bethlehem. And we know because we can see it. We've done surveys with kids, and I've watched my own kids consume this content, where suddenly pieces are connecting together in their mind. They're familiar with the story of David and Goliath, but when you see the Valley of Elah, when you see the creek side on Israel's side of that battlefield, and that's where David picked up his smooth stones. Oh, they are connecting these pieces and putting the stories of the Bible, and this is really important for us, out of the bucket of the rest of the fantastical stories that they're told growing up. This is not a nursery rhyme. This is not a once upon a time in a land far away. This is historical, accurate, accounts. And because they're able to see the visuals, they're able to put them in the right place, in the proper place. And and it prompts such fascinating questions. It gets them interested and engaged. And this is one of the tools. It's not the only one, but it's certainly one of the tools that we believe is helpful to re-engage this next generation and get them invested and interested in the word again.
So are you telling the story, or you're more just showing like where it happened and what the tools look like, or how does that
We
look?
combine both. And so we've got hosts that come on camera, take you through the area, but they're typically interviewing or talking with someone who can help explain the geography and the history, sometimes the archaeology of that place, and then they are weaving that together with the biblical account. Sometimes they're even just opening the book and reading it. That's honestly, it's one of the most powerful scenes that I can recall is standing in the Valley of Elah and just reading a section of the story where David comes out and confronts Goliath. You come at me with a sword and a spear, but I come at you in the name of the Lord. Um, we want them to understand both. And what it does is it again, it puts those things together so that we can understand them to be real. So it's helpful for people who maybe know the stories very well. They've been reading the Bible for a long time, and it helps to reinforce, what they know and believe. But it's also done in such a way so that maybe your knowledge of the Bible is fairly limited. You don't know it. Watching these videos, our hope is that it gives you enough to then want to go and open the book and learn more and read more. So
So
that's
what's
the goal.
the age group that you target?
It is one of those things where I would say anyone interested in the Bible. Now, we do create what we call our main series, and these are typically going to be documentary series, 25 to 30 minutes a piece, or even feature-length documentaries that we've done. We just came out with one earlier last year called Out of Egypt. Those are primarily directed at, say, like junior high and up, but I've shown them to my small children and they follow them and watch them. And um, we do also have a children's series that is written more to a grade school level, second to sixth grade, really. Um, and those are called our lessons from the land. So very similar content, very similar material, but written in such a way so that we're kind of appealing to you know, these are individuals that maybe don't know the biblical stories as well, or even don't know some of these words that we need to help define a little bit. And so we've got both, and between those two, we have content for young and old.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, as I was researching you a bit, you talked about how you want to equip the next generation to counter the culture of Hollywood. So, what first would you say is the
Hmm.
culture of Hollywood,
Yeah.
and how's that impacting our kids, and how are you trying to help counter that?
Yeah, so I was able to go to film school in Atlanta in 2005. A quality education. They taught me so much, and the tools of the trade that I was appreciative to have really started me on this path. But I had to weed through several, not all, but several of my professors who were so blatantly anti-God and anti-Christian, who taught us that film, especially, is a medium that can be used to change people's minds.
Mm,
And it's true. There's no
yeah.
secret in that. We all understand it's a method of communication. That's how we change people's minds. And yet, the means in which we were encouraged to change people's minds was fairly deceptive and manipulative.
Mm,
And they understood. In fact, they didn't simply refer to us as entertainers. They referred to us as culture changers.
mm,
And they said, look, you can make a movie 2 hours long where you get to talk at an audience, not with an audience. You get to talk at them for 2 hours at a time. And most people are going to open their brains and just let you do it.
mm,
Now think of the power that you have. And so they trained us to communicate our worldview in ways that were subtle, sometimes not so subtle. And I didn't like what I was hearing. I didn't like, and we can simply see over the last many years what our culture has become in many ways based on what our entertainers have told us they want it to be. And as a Christian, I did my best to kind of stand up for the truth of Scripture and Christianity and God among that environment. But after honestly just a couple of years, I was able to graduate and come out of it and say, listen, they're not wrong. This medium can be used to influence people. We can change people's minds by showing them and telling them powerful stories. But I don't want to trick people. I don't want to manipulate them. And I don't want to communicate the kind of worldview that encourages the type of culture that they ascribe to. And so what I did was commit to taking the tools that they taught me, again, incredibly professional people, very good at their craft, and say, how can we use that to communicate God's eternal truth? How can we use that to communicate things that will actually better people from the inside out?
mm,
And that's what's kind of led me on this path to I have finally found a way to marry my passion of the craft and the art and marry my faith in Christ and try to communicate things and let the scriptures, let God's inspired word change people. And we're not going to trick you. We're not going to manipulate you. We're not going to hide what we're trying to do. And we're going to wrap it up in compelling and professionally crafted visuals. So that's what we're striving to do at Appian Media, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, especially when I encounter younger people considering getting into this industry who do have a faith. We bear a great responsibility. We can change people's minds. We can influence large groups of people. I mean, they told us, they're like, think of this. When was the last time you sat and watched C-SPAN for 2 hours? Now, some people do. I've got friends that do, but most people don't sit and listen to politicians for hours at a time.
mhm,
But we will go into a movie theater, and if it's a Marvel movie, we'll sit for like 3 hours and let them talk to us. Let them tell us what the world is like. Let them tell us what good is and what evil is. And sometimes those things are not what actually are true. And they said, who else has this kind of power?
mm.
And so, to quote a Marvel movie, right? With great power comes great responsibility. How can we use these tools to better people with the message of God?
It's really cool. Do you have desire in the future to make movies like that for adults? I realize you said even adults watch you, but yeah.
Right. I would very much like to. I mean, I went to school primarily focusing on, screenwriting and narrative film. I worked with actors and directed them and very much enjoy that. While the last 10 years has been primarily documentary, I have been able to produce some short films. One was actually 40 minutes long, so I don't know if that's still short, but there's still that creative itch that I would like that opportunity in the future. Who knows? I just turned 40, and the way that I explain that to people is, Moses's life didn't really start getting interesting until he was 40.
There you
And
go.
so, who knows what opportunities might come up.
So I'm thinking about The Chosen. I talk about it a fair amount. So, what's your take on that? Do you feel like it's a similar vision to what you have, although yours is pretty focused more on historical documentation and young
Yeah.
people?
I've never had an opportunity to talk with Dallas Jenkins. I'd love to interview him, in fact. But I believe that their vision and mission is the same. They're just coming at it from a different approach. Um, I think they're trying to get people interested and invested in the gospel story. Um, it's a tricky job. In fact, it's not a job that I would like, where they've decided to go the route where they're trying to tell the biblical story, but they're creating fictional narrative
Hmm.
surrounding it in a
Hmm.
way that could be plausible. Um, and that's not going to be satisfying to everyone. You've got to make countless creative
Right.
decisions. What are these people saying? What are they wearing? What does the place look like? And I believe that they've got a desire to be historically accurate. Um, I'm always very careful, and I believe that they try to be when representing Jesus himself. I want to make
Hmm.
sure that
Yeah.
that he's the Jesus that's being represented in Scripture. And so my recommendation to people, I've seen The Chosen and I've watched it. Their production quality is top notch. I mean, it is unlike anything that the Christian industry has put out, and I applaud them for that. It's about time.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
acting and the production value, the way that they shoot it and edit is just absolutely commendable. Um, I always encourage people, though, that I think The Chosen can be very helpful if you know the gospel story well going into it. Because if you don't, I'm afraid that you may have trouble separating what actually occurred to the
Right.
things that they've added surrounding it. Because I don't believe that they want you to come away thinking that, Peter really said and did some of the things that the show depicts.
Right.
We
Right.
don't know. So that's my admonition is get to know the gospel story very, very well. Know it backwards and forwards. Know these characters. Know exactly what it was that Jesus said and did. And and then watching The Chosen, I think it can have a good impact to remind us that these were real people. I think that is something that is helpful to watch. Um, these aren't characters; they're real people, and they had real emotions. And so when Jesus performed those miracles, the Bible doesn't necessarily give us a lot of detail on the impact that had, but let's take some time to consider.
Yeah.
Um, and so in a way, I think that they are reigniting an interest in the gospel story, and I applaud that. I appreciate that. We're
Yeah.
coming at it from a different avenue. We're interviewing real people. We're traveling to the real places and doing it in a documentary style. Therefore, I don't have to worry about what Jesus looked like or wore. I think
Yeah.
Jonathan Rumi does a great job, um, but it's a challenge, and
Yeah.
I do know they try to take that seriously.
Yeah, it's courageous, I will say. But so are you. And I also have a nonprofit, and we're very dependent on donations
Right,
to go to. This year we have 9 countries we're going to, and so to get ourselves there, we really depend on other people understanding the value of what we're doing.
right,
What I hear from you is kind of making the Bible come alive and really putting an interest in young people's lives to look at the Bible, to value the Bible, to study the Bible. I do think Chosen has that impact. I know even for me, I go back and my husband are like, wait, what does it say? Even
Hmm.
though we do know it so well, it's like, well,
Hmm.
that wasn't really in there, but it also makes you think about, which I'm sure yours does too, is wow, what would that be like to,
Yes.
you know, and I, for me, I've never thought about the fact that these guys and women were traveling, living off the land for 3 years, and what would their
Hmm.
relationships be like? What would that be like to be stuck with these 12 people plus
Right.
some others all that time and to increasingly see that persecution and all these things, which I think you're probably accomplishing that as well in a different way, in a
Yeah.
documentary way.
Yeah, we're trying to, in many ways, we're trying to catch up modern audiences with the knowledge that the original recipients of the gospel already had. So, for example, when the gospels were written and they mentioned that Matthew was a tax collector and Simon was a zealot, as a 21st century American, I I know what a tax collector is, like I can kind of understand that, but
Yeah.
I need someone to explain to me what a zealot is and why those two people would probably have a really hard time getting along.
Hmm.
The Bible doesn't explain it to us. They assume the audience knows because the
Yeah,
original
they
recipients did.
did.
And so we're trying to at least catch us up. Um, and that goes with the history. They were under Roman occupation in the first century. Well, what does that mean? What did that
Hmm.
look like? We're
Hmm.
not told in intricate detail, but we do benefit by having a deeper understanding of that political environment and what that meant for the Jewish people to be under an oppressive regime like that. Um, how far away was Jerusalem to Bethlehem? What kind of a trip would it have been to go from Nazareth to come down? Why does the Bible keep saying go up to Jerusalem even when they're traveling south? It's things like that that um, benefit our study of the Bible by at least catching us up again. And it
Hmm.
makes us read that text again with a deeper and greater appreciation. Oh, wow. Simon the Zealot and Matthew the tax collector spent 3+ years traveling together and working side by side to accomplish a greater mission. Okay, that's something. And getting people to appreciate that. Um, and there's just there's so many examples of that we want to re-engage is kind of a word that we use a lot as far as our mission is concerned. Re-engage. These accounts have been around for millennia. There's something about my generation, and especially the generation coming after me, that are not engaged and invested in the word as much as we've seen perhaps in past generations. And why is that? There was a comment that a young man made with Stuart in after we'd released our very first set of videos for Following Messiah. I think this kid was 11 or 12 years old, and he came up to Stuart and said, "You made the Bible cool."
That's good.
And and it's like, well, the Bible is cool all by itself. Like it doesn't need my help. But to get in his mind to put the
Hmm.
Bible in the same category that he puts things that he thinks are cool,
Yeah.
like that is an accomplishment. And we're glad to be able to do that. The Bible is cool and it's rich and powerful and life-changing. And we want young and old to have that same kind of, oh, look at this. This is a page turner. I want to, read about what happens next.
Do you have people on your staff who are uh, Gen Z, for example, that can help you understand the generation?
I think so. I have a hard time figuring out the age bracket of that. I think I am right on the edge of millennial, right? But we do have I say a young man. He's in his mid 20s now. Um, Right now, he's probably one of the youngest on our team. And yet, when we do focus group our content, as it's in its final days of post production, we like to get people of a variety of ages.
Good.
I do show it to my kids.
Hmm.
I've got an 11, a 9, and an almost 7-year old. And they've been watching my content, since the early days. Because I want to see what's keeping their attention. When do they seem to be, pulling back? What kind of questions do they have? Does it make sense to them? Um, and yeah, we're not trying to modify the message. We're not trying to change the Bible. It's perfect. We can trust it. God has provided it for us, and it's survived millennia. But we're trying to, and everyone knows this, when you communicate, how you communicate is important. It's not just what you're trying to say, but how you present it to an audience, and that's what we're trying to refine with each project that we do.
Do you try to bring in an application at the end? So now that you
We
know
do.
this, uh-huh.
That's right. Yeah, and not simply at the end. We try to sprinkle it throughout. Now, when you watch the Following the Messiah series, we very much have a very clear, application at the end. So now that we've seen this, so what? Um, that is a question we try to ask ourselves, especially as we produce this written content, these workbooks, where now that you've seen it, okay, you've got the right kind of visuals. Now, understanding the text better, but the Bible is not an academic exercise solely. It's supposed to change us. So now that I know it, so what? What am I supposed to do with it? What does God
Yeah,
intend for us to do with it? That's an important part of what we produce.
awesome. Well, this is exciting. So tell us more, Craig, about how people can find Appian Media. Am I saying that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and even look at some of your videos.
Absolutely. You can find us by going to our website, appianmedia.org. You can also just look us up on YouTube. All of the videos that we've produced, we have up on our YouTube channel. And that includes not just our series and children's series, but our podcasts and a lot of behind the scenes. So your son would probably be very interested in that. I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy. When we travel over to those lands, and what does that look like? And so you can see that all on our YouTube channel. Most social media sites, just look up Appian Media. And there's a contact form on our website, that if anyone has any questions or they want to reach out to me or members of our team, they can use that. We're always so appreciative to hear from viewers.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Craig. And y'all, now you know, amazing resource that you can check out. I know I want to go check it out. Not that I have younger kids anymore, but just I would love to see how you handled this and getting to see personally, since I can't go to Israel right now, like what is it all about? What does it look like? Yeah, how to put that together in the word. So thanks so much, y'all. Thanks for listening. This has been a very interesting interview. Appreciate it so much, Craig. And looking forward to being together with everybody again next week. Have a great week.